Dubai is a city built on certainty, a place where glass towers rise with mathematical precision, where surveillance is constant, and where nothing is supposed to vanish without explanation. It sells safety, control, and order to the world, projecting the image of a system so tightly managed that chaos simply cannot exist within it. And yet, beneath the immaculate skyline and the carefully curated promise of luxury, there are spaces that operate beyond visibility, places where access is restricted, records are fragmented, and accountability dissolves behind layers of wealth and jurisdiction. On the evening of May 18, 2022, 29-year-old compliance consultant Lena Hartmann entered one of those spaces, a private penthouse high above Dubai Marina, owned through a maze of offshore companies and accessible only by a secured elevator. She arrived alone, on time, and without hesitation. There were no signs of distress, no warning alarms, no indication that anything would go wrong. But she never walked out again. No body was found. No crime scene was declared. Surveillance footage vanished during a critical window, and within 48 hours, authorities suggested she had voluntarily departed, closing the door on questions that refused to disappear. Tonight, we are reopening that door, tracing the final known hours of Lena Hartmann's life and uncovering how, in a city designed to see everything, a woman could step into a penthouse and be erased without a trace. Lena Hartmann was not the kind of woman who blended into Dubai's version of success, and that may have been the first problem. Born in Germany and trained in financial compliance and risk analysis, she built her career behind the scenes, auditing offshore structures, tracing hidden ownership chains, and identifying irregular flows of money that others preferred not to examine too closely. She wasn't interested in influence or visibility, and she avoided social media almost entirely, a rarity in a city fueled by image and display. When she relocated to Dubai in early 2022 for a 6-month contract with a private advisory firm, friends described her as cautious but curious, intrigued by the scale of wealth yet unsettled by how efficiently complexity was concealed. Almost immediately, she began noticing inconsistencies, documents that contradicted one another, ownership records that shifted overnight, and entities that appeared and disappeared without explanation, and the more she asked about them, the more resistance she encountered. Her tone changed in private conversations, becoming measured and deliberate, as if she were choosing every word carefully, and she stopped sharing details about her work altogether. In one voice note to her sister, she admitted that something felt too clean, explaining that in her experience, absolute order usually meant someone had already erased the mess. Lena didn't panic, but she didn't relax either. She worked longer hours, saved redundant copies of files, and began carrying a second phone she never mentioned to colleagues. She was, in every sense, a professional who followed patterns, and the pattern she was beginning to see in Dubai didn't suggest opportunity, it suggested containment, a system designed to function perfectly on the surface while quietly neutralizing anything that didn't belong. The client who ultimately drew Lena Hartmann deeper into Dubai's most opaque financial corridors arrived not with a name, but with a structure and intricate web of shell companies registered across 3 continents, all converging on a single holding entity based in the UAE. Officially, the assignment was routine, a compliance review requested by an international family office seeking to reassure foreign partners. Unofficially, almost everything about it felt wrong. The paperwork Lena received was unusually polished, yet riddled with subtle gaps, missing signatures, backdated amendments, and valuation reports that referenced assets no registry could confirm. When she asked for clarification, responses were delayed, carefully worded, or redirected through intermediaries who never appeared in person. The client's representatives insisted on off-platform communication, discouraged written records, and emphasized discretion with a firmness that crossed into warning. As Lena dug deeper, she discovered that several of the companies had been flagged years earlier in European intelligence reports connected to sanctions evasion and political exposure. Yet those same entities now appeared fully cleared within UAE systems. The contradiction unsettled her. She began reconstructing the ownership chain independently, using archived filings and foreign court documents. And what emerged was a pattern of asset laundering so sophisticated it suggested state-level protection or the involvement of individuals powerful enough to bend compliance rules without consequence. In late April, Lena confided to a former colleague that the client wasn't just hiding money, they were hiding history. Shortly after, she received an invitation to resolve outstanding questions in person, framed as a courtesy meeting at a private residence overlooking Dubai Marina. The message was polite, professional, and impossibly vague, offering reassurance without specifics. Lena hesitated for days before accepting, aware that walking into a private setting removed every safeguard her profession relied on. Still, she agreed, perhaps believing that clarity could only come from confrontation, unaware that in Dubai's invisible corridors of power, some meetings were never meant to produce answers, only silence. The penthouse where Lena Hartmann was last seen sat at the top of a luxury tower in Dubai Marina, a place marketed as untouchable: private elevators, biometric access, and a security desk that knew residents by face, not name. On the evening of May 18th, Lena arrived just before 8 p.m., her entry logged digitally but never captured on camera due to what building management later described as a temporary system synchronization error. She took the elevator alone, carrying only a slim laptop case and her phone, and stepped into a space designed less like a home and more like a controlled environment. Minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling glass, and a view that stretched endlessly across the water, offering beauty without privacy. According to later statements, two individuals were already inside, though neither could agree on who invited whom, and no official guest list existed. The atmosphere, by all accounts, was calm but deliberate. Conversation guided carefully away from specifics, with Lena asking pointed questions that were met with reassurances instead of answers. At some point during the meeting, she requested access to certain financial documents and was told they would be provided once trust was established, a phrase that appeared repeatedly in accounts of the evening. What happened next is where certainty ends. Phone data shows Lena stopped responding to messages shortly after 8:42 p.m., and no outbound calls were made from her device afterward. Neighbors reported no disturbance, no raised voices, no signs of struggle. By 9:15 p.m., the penthouse elevator registered a descent, but the system could not confirm how many occupants were inside. Whether Lena left the apartment alive, unconscious, or not at all remains unknown. In a building designed to record everything, the penthouse became a blind spot, an immaculate, soundless space where a woman entered, questions unanswered, and where the city's promise of absolute visibility quietly failed. What took place inside the penthouse after the doors closed has never been officially reconstructed, but fragments drawn from digital traces, partial statements, and what Lena herself left behind suggest a meeting that shifted from professional to deeply unsettling. According to metadata recovered later from Lena's laptop, she accessed a secure folder moments after arriving, opening files she had not touched before, as if preparing for confrontation rather than conversation. The tone of the meeting, sources would later say, was calm on the surface yet weighted with implication, the kind of dialogue where every sentence is measured and every pause is intentional. Lena pressed for clarity on ownership structures, asking why certain entities appeared scrubbed clean across multiple jurisdictions, and why compliance flags in Europe had no counterparts in the UAE. The responses she received were indirect, framed as misunderstandings, jurisdictional differences, or outdated concerns until one comment, recalled vaguely by a witness, landed with quiet finality. Some systems work differently here. At some point, the discussion moved away from documents and toward Lena herself, her contract, her future, and the advantages of discretion in a city that rewarded those who understood its rules. An offer was made, not explicitly financial, but structural: continued work, expanded access, and protection in exchange for cooperation. Lena did not accept immediately. Her phone records suggest she typed a message she never sent, and motion data indicates she stood, walked toward the windows, then returned to the table. From that moment forward, the meeting ceased to resemble negotiation and began to feel like containment. Voices were never raised, no threats were recorded, yet the imbalance of power became unmistakable. By the time the conversation ended, whatever Lena believed she was there to resolve had been replaced by something far more dangerous: the realization that she was no longer simply auditing a system, but standing inside one that had already decided how much truth it would allow to exist. Between 9:17 p.m. and just after midnight, Lena Hartmann's timeline fractures into silence, a gap so complete it feels engineered rather than accidental. Her phone shows no outgoing activity after the meeting concluded, yet it never powers down. Location data continues to register within the building's vertical stack, as if the device itself were being carried or left somewhere. It could still ping a signal, Security logs from the tower record routine movements, residents returning home, service elevators cycling, a late-night delivery sign for on a different floor. Nothing flags as unusual, nothing that would justify alarm. And yet, multiple systems that should overlap elevator cameras, corridor feeds, access readers fail to corroborate one another during this window, each offering just enough data to appear functional while revealing nothing conclusive. Building staff later recalled a brief maintenance override requested by management, though no written order could be produced. At 10:41 p.m., a private vehicle exits the underground garage without a plate capture, its authorization logged under a master credential rarely used. Somewhere during these hours, Lena's second phone, the one few people knew existed, goes dark permanently, last connecting to a nearby cell tower before disappearing from the network. No messages are sent, no calls placed, no distress signals triggered. For investigators, the missing hours become the case's gravitational center, pulling every theory inward. Was Lena still in the penthouse, held by conversation rather than force, persuaded to wait, to reconsider, to listen? Or had she already been moved, guided through spaces the cameras were never meant to see? In a city where time is tracked down to the second, the absence of a record becomes its own kind of evidence, a deliberate pause in the machinery, a moment when the system chose not to look. When concern finally escalated into alarm, it wasn't triggered by authorities but by absence. Lena Hartmann failed to show up for work the following morning, then missed a scheduled call with her sister that she had never once skipped. By late afternoon, a colleague used the spare key Lena had left behind just in case and entered her Marina apartment, expecting to find her asleep or working late. Instead, the space was unnervingly intact. Her laptop bag was gone, but her passport lay untouched in a drawer, alongside neatly folded clothes prepared for a trip she never took. The second phone was missing, but the primary one, her everyday device, sat on the kitchen counter, fully charged, wiped clean of fingerprints, and restored to factory settings. Nothing appeared broken, nothing stolen, nothing obviously disturbed, yet the apartment felt staged, as if someone had paused Lena's life mid-sentence. There were no signs of forced entry, the door had been locked from the outside using her own digital access code, and building logs showed no irregular access after 9 p.m. the night before. Even more troubling was what wasn't there, the external hard drive Lena used for backups, the one she never traveled without. To anyone else, the apartment would have suggested voluntary departure, but to those who knew her habits, it told a different story entirely. Lena did not leave without documentation, without warning, without a trail. The locked apartment didn't confirm she was gone, it suggested she had been removed, carefully and quietly, leaving behind just enough normalcy to delay questions until time itself became an accomplice. 3 weeks after Lena Hartmann vanished, a device surfaced that complicated everything investigators thought they understood. It wasn't logged into evidence, wasn't recovered by police, and officially, it didn't exist at all. The phone arrived anonymously at her firm's office, sealed inside a plain courier envelope with no return address, delivered by a service that kept no long-term records. Inside was an older model smartphone, unencrypted by modern standards, but meticulously maintained, along with a single typed note that read only, "She tried to do the right thing." The device powered on without a passcode, as if it had been prepared to be accessed, and its contents revealed why someone might want it both discovered and disowned. Inside were screenshots of internal compliance dashboards, audio recordings of meetings Lena was never supposed to attend, and a series of time-stamped notes documenting discrepancies between reported asset ownership and real control names, redacted, but patterns unmistakable. Most unsettling was a short voice memo recorded the night of the meeting, Lena's voice steady but tense, saying, "If anything happens, this isn't a misunderstanding. It's a decision." Metadata placed the recording inside the Marina Tower, yet the phone had never connected to local networks afterward, suggesting it had been shielded or powered off immediately. Forensics later confirmed the device had been wiped remotely just hours before delivery, leaving only what someone wanted preserved. Who sent it and why remains unknown. Was it a guilty conscience, an internal fracture, or a calculated release of pressure to prevent deeper scrutiny? The phone shouldn't have existed at all, yet it reintroduced intent into a case built on absence, transforming Lena from a missing person into a woman who had anticipated erasure and prepared, in her own quiet way, to resist it. One of the few people present during Lena Hartmann's final hours, identified only as the operations support woman, became the focal point of suspicion almost immediately, and then disappeared herself in a pattern eerily similar to Lena's vanishing. 2 days after Lena was reported missing, flight records show the woman leaving Dubai on a private jet bound for Serbia, traveling under a corporate identity unlinked to any permanent address. Attempts by authorities to contact her through phone numbers, email, or company channels went unanswered, and her LinkedIn and professional profiles were deleted within hours of departure. Witnesses who had seen her in the penthouse recall her demeanor as calm, composed, and unusually familiar with both the building and the security protocols. She moved through spaces others would hesitate to enter, accessed digital panels without hesitation, and subtly guided conversations without overt participation. Some suggest she had been the only person with both access and knowledge sufficient to oversee the containment of Lena if such a plan existed. Her disappearance created a vacuum in the timeline, leaving investigators with partial statements, conflicting accounts, and a growing suspicion that her exit was neither coincidence nor oversight but a deliberate step to remove the final living link to what transpired inside Penthouse 1801. With her gone, so too vanished any clarity about Lena's movements, the decisions made during that meeting, and whether anyone had actively intervened to orchestrate her disappearance. In a city that prides itself on surveillance and control, the absence of the operation support woman became a haunting echo of the very system that allowed Lena to vanish, reinforcing the possibility that the machinery of power in Dubai operates not only to oversee but, when necessary, to erase. As investigators pieced together the fragments of Lena Hartmann's disappearance, a theory emerged so unsettling that few were willing to voice it publicly. She may never have been taken in the traditional sense at all, because in Dubai's rarefied circles, disappearance can be manufactured without violence. Lena's expertise in compliance and offshore finance meant she had uncovered irregularities tied to politically exposed individuals and sanctioned entities, details that could trigger international scrutiny if leaked. Removing her physically would have been too conspicuous, drawing unwanted attention to both the penthouse and the clients involved. But orchestrating her erasure through legal and bureaucratic means, through deliberate manipulation of access codes, camera logs, and digital footprints, would allow the powerful to neutralize a threat without creating a traditional crime scene. Evidence pointed to careful timing, the temporary shutdown of security cameras, the strategic absence of witnesses, and the precise management of digital devices all suggest that Lena's disappearance was controlled, monitored, and designed to leave no trace. If true, the implication is chilling. She wasn't just a missing person, she was a signal, a demonstration that even those trained to uncover hidden systems could be quietly overridden. It's a theory that reframes every fragment recovered, every anonymous delivery, and every empty corridor in Penthouse 1801. Lena Hartmann may not have been abducted. She may have been deliberately unmade in a city where wealth and influence can bend reality, ensuring that truth becomes a negotiable commodity and that some people simply vanish not because of brute force, but because the system decides they must. By the time authorities concluded their initial investigation, the outlines of Lena Hartmann's fate were no clearer than they had been the night she disappeared. No body, no crime scene, no definitive witness, and no record of her leaving the city legally. Every lead either dissolved into conflicting testimony or ended in a dead end created by layers of wealth, influence, and carefully engineered secrecy. The anonymous phone that surfaced weeks later suggested foresight, a recognition that someone might try to erase her entirely, but it only deepened the mystery, showing that she knew danger was imminent and tried to leave traces of what she had discovered. The Operation Support woman's sudden exit, the precise timing of disabled cameras, and the carefully managed penthouse environment all point to the possibility that Lena was removed from visibility without a traditional act of violence, erased in a way designed to leave no conventional evidence, a testament to the power and control wielded by those who operate beyond the law. Today, Lena Hartmann is officially listed as missing, presumed relocated, yet every piece of the puzzle hints at something far darker, a world where disappearance is engineered, truth is negotiable, and accountability exists only on paper. The penthouse remains, sold and repurposed, a silent monument to a night that should have been ordinary but became impossible to explain. And the question remains, haunting those who follow her case: did Lena walk away into anonymity by choice, or was she erased because she saw too much, knew too much, and threatened the delicate facades of power? In Dubai, where everything is seen yet nothing is certain, Her story remains a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous place isn't the streets, the boardrooms, or the boardwalks, it's the spaces designed to be invisible. If you're drawn to stories of power, secrets, and disappearances that defy explanation, subscribe now, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the world's most mysterious cases. Comment below and tell us, do you think Lena Hartmann vanished by choice, or was she erased? Your theory could be closer to the truth than anyone realizes.